Pivot in Progress episode. And today we have something that I would say is the heart of what we really do at Pivot in helping people accomplish their most ambitious career goals, which is how do you navigate crowded job markets like the ones today. There are a lot of different factors, both at macro level as well as micro level, that have changed the rules of the game for the job market right now. There's a lot of impact of AI transformation that's happening in how companies are prioritizing certain talent, or changing the skills criteria that they have in JDs. There's also a ton of layoffs that have been happening over the last few years now, and there is no sign of stoppage. We see companies again and again going for multiple rounds of layoffs, which is creating a lot of panic but also crowdedness in the job market. And there are many other factors, like people are also themselves looking for roles more frequently than they used to, etc., etc. So in these kind of job markets, you have to understand that the playbook that worked maybe 5 years or 10 years ago is not necessarily working today. So in that context, we have two very special speakers who are waiting backstage. I'll be bringing them up here, but both of them have been somebody who I've worked with closely on their transition. So I'm very excited to have them both with me today. And without further ado, I'll bring both Rikita and Deep to the stage. Hi, both. Welcome again. How are you doing?
Hello, hi. Very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Jim, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting us.
Great. And thank you to both of you for making time for this again. Rikita, I know you're not feeling so well, so I, especially thank you for doing this despite your, current situation. Now, I think what we can do, guys, is just do a quick round of intros before we dive into the topic. So I can go first. Let me just change the visual here. Right. So I'll go first. For those who don't know me, my name is Arjun and I'm the founder of Pivot. What we do at Pivot is help mid career professionals who are looking for different types of career goals when they're making a transition from one industry to another, or one country to another, sometimes changing their level in the organization. So these inflection point transitions are where we specialize, and we help people land their target role. um, I think Rikita, Deep are two such individuals that we have worked with. So, excited to uncover their journey today on this platform. The other thing that I also want to talk about, which we'll share more during the course of this conversation, is the type of support that we provide to help people achieve their goals. So that's something that you'll get to hear more from both Rikita and Deep, as well as myself. But with that, I'll turn it over to Rikita. Rikita, welcome again. And if you could just tell us briefly about your background and kind of what you do today, that would be great.
Hi, I am very happy to be here. My name is Rikita, and I have been a senior development sector professional for over 8 years, 9 years almost now. My background is psychology, and I have experience in leading end-to-end projects on ground. Multiple location projects with CSR partners, and this has been my journey so far. But I'm actually embarking on a new journey thanks to this transition, thanks to the program, and this transition is now going to be on the other side of the table. I won't be implementing anymore. I will be in the grant process. So hopefully, this is going to be a good transition for me, and I'm excited to dive in further in the talk.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Deep, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Deep. I've spent years in product across e-commerce, gaming, and now vertical SaaS. I recently joined StarRes, and I'm working on one of the platforms. And yeah, excited to share my experiences, and if it could help anyone, I'll be more than happy.
Thanks, Deep. Deep, actually, it would be helpful if you keep that microphone slightly closer
Oh,
to you. Yeah, I think it was perfect when it was closer to you. Yeah, great.
okay, got it.
Thanks so much. Okay, so let's get started. Rikita, Deep, it's been a pleasure sort of working with both of you, seeing your journeys up front, but it has been, not the rosiest picture, in kind of navigating the current job market. There are different types of challenges that both of you experience. So what I wanted to start off with is, I talked about how AI is impacting, how layoffs have impacted the job market. And then there are many individual specific situations and challenges that both of you, must have navigated as well. So let's start with kind of the beginning, which is when you started thinking about transitioning to a new role. What initially were you trying to do that was not working, especially because you felt that it wasn't something you were doing wrong, but the rules of the game, as I mentioned earlier, had changed. So can you, because I mean, you both have been in the market for some time, you've worked for a number of years. So what do you think has changed in the job market that you wanted to address better? And that's one of the reasons, let's say, that we started working together on your transition. So, Rikita, we'll start with you.
Sure. So, I think when I first started thinking about transitioning, there were two things that were actually going wrong with me, for me, really. One was that I think my fantasy, so to say, was that I could hand over my, CV drafting to somebody, and like they would make my CV, and I would just have like a ready CV to apply to all of these places. Huge sort of a mistake on my end. I do believe that there are some facilitators now in the AI world, but there are no true shortcuts. Secondly, what was definitely going, against me was I had a lot of breadth of work. In the 9 years in the organization that I'd been working, I had done many different kinds of things, which means that my work was divided into several different roles. So implementation was one part, organizational development was one part, providing executive support to my founder was another part. The problem was, and I can term all of these now, by the way. This is the problem. I wasn't able to term all of this earlier on, and there was a lot of breadth to what I had done, lack of vocabulary in sort of describing it, and a sort of center of gravity in my positioning as to if I'm going to enter this market after 9 long years or 8 long years. Where do I find myself? I'm just a fish in a large ocean. How am I going to find myself here? What is going to be my positioning? How am I going to find anchors that will help me actually position myself to companies, or my or my dream sort of aspirational companies that I want to work with? I was very unanchored, so to say. So these were
Mhm.
the two major problems that I think I was facing, and that's when I realized that it was not just, initially I thought, looking for jobs is really just about making a good CV, but it is so much more than that. So I thought I would just, maybe get my CV done and I'll be fine. But that's not really how it is. Finding your positioning is important. Finding even to write CVs. How do you write CVs? I think we'll sort of jump into it in the later
Right.
part of the talk. But
Mhm.
yes, these were the two major problems that I was facing.
Right, right. No, very interesting. And I think, we did work on some of these together. So I would definitely want you to cover that. But quickly turning it over to Deep. So Deep, I think the same kind of question that I have for you is, at the beginning of your job search or thinking about, okay, I'm going to start transitioning to a new role, what were the key things that were going through your mind? Both that you felt like, okay, this is something that I should be able to do because I've done it before, but it had changed. Like you realized that it had really become different than what you had experienced before in terms of job search. And also, like, what were your main goals at the time that you were trying to achieve in accomplishing a new role?
Sure. As you mentioned, so far most of my opportunities were came inbound. Okay, so I didn't have to let's say reach out. But now the market dynamics was very different. Inbounds had dried up across the board, and portals had become mostly noise channels.
Mhm.
Hundreds of applicants per role within hours, and from a recruiter point of view, we could see a lot of ghosting that was going on. So for me, the challenge was the way I was looking at it was very linear. Okay, so I was chasing, let's say, role titles, uh,
Hmm.
and that was, I think, that is where I spent most of the time, and that is where I think I missed opportunities, because if I look at some of my friends who were in product, okay, they transitioned into other roles. They didn't let's say continue in the product journey. I mean, up in product roles, but they were doing adjacent roles. They went into adjacent roles like consulting, operations. So this was one miss that I was going through. So I was looking at job titles and not the the shape of the role rather. Okay, so shape of my next role rather. So that was
Yeah.
one challenge. uh, Second was, let's say, again, after spending after having a significant experience, you have a decent network, but how to tap onto that network was something that I was not able to do at in the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, makes sense. And I think both the problems that you identified, Deep, I think a lot of people would actually resonate with that. There are so many people who are, navigating the job market, realizing that, okay, the role that I'm targeting is not the only role that's a good fit for me. There might be other roles, but I need to dive deeper to understand, the actual requirements and my alignment with those roles. And I think the networking part is just becoming way, way, way more important than it used to be, just because of how crowded the job markets are today. So would definitely want to unpack that as much as possible. The next thing that I wanted to ask is, now that you have identified these initial issues, you might have even started working on trying to resolve them yourself, and then you were looking for certain type of support as well. So how did you evaluate this requirement that, hey, you know what, I should get some sort of support, or I should not just do this on my own necessarily? What made that kind of clear, that decision that you made? What made that clear for you? What were some of the key factors you were considering at the time in terms of doing it on your own versus looking for some sort of a support in the market? Again, Rikita, we can start with you on this.
Yes, I think what was not working from me, because of the two things that I was struggling with that I just mentioned, not having a clear positioning, not having the right vocabulary to even define my experience or to position myself, and how to even make a good CV was something that I was struggling with. And what that resulted in is basically was honestly very catastrophic for me, because I wasn't feeling confident to put myself out there. That was a huge sort of an alarming sign for me, that I'm not even feeling confident in, to even enter the market and to see what I can really get out of it, or what I can really do. After 9 years, after spending a long time in an organization, that's something that tends to happen to you, because you've not been out there exposed. So, your confidence takes a hit, and you don't really have that sort of a validation that, when you go out there, you would be wanted. So, and what was really intensifying this were the two things that I spoke about earlier on. That was one thing. And secondly, I think what I mentioned was that I didn't even know how to write my CV in a way that, let me paint a picture. I didn't even know how to start it. I didn't know what to put down on a piece of paper that would even qualify as CV points. Secondly, I was getting more and more puzzled as I was drowning in sort of these job descriptions and listings, and I couldn't really find myself in them. So I couldn't understand which is it that I should be applying to. So, huge sort of struggle for me at that point, and that is when I decided, okay, you know what, maybe I should at least talk to someone. And I first started with, when I first had a conversation with you, Arjun, I think my entire motivation was to just sort of hand over to you my CV writing, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be fine after that. And then it was after speaking with you, I realized there's so much more in the process. That is why there's a whole program designed at Pivot, right? So there was so much more. There's so much more to explore about yourself, and I realized that there are no two ways about it. You will have to engage with your own experience. You will have to engage deeply with what you have done, so far. There are no two ways about it. So yes, I think that is why I realized that I needed to at least speak to someone, despite the fact that there's AI and chat GPT and all of that. But what somebody with experience can do for you and knowledge can do for you, no AI can do for you, I think. So yeah.
Very well said. Yeah, no, I completely resonate with that. In terms of the way you identified the issue and kind of have the maturity to know that, sometimes it takes more time to figure things out on your own rather than going into the market and learning from those who are
Yes.
already working in your target roles or who have made that kind of a shift. And I think, yeah, I do recall initially the ask was, hey, can you work on the
Yeah.
CV? And then we discussed the
Yeah.
process. And I think, as your journey unfolded, we realized how some of those other aspects of your transition that we focused on actually helped us so much in gaining the confidence also,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
um, yeah, so I think very, very well pointed out. Deep, same question for you. What made you decide at the point? I think yours might have been slightly different kind of a requirement at the time. So what made you decide that, hey, you know what, I have done this before, but this time I want to do it with the support of somebody else?
All right. So a couple of things. So when I speak to my uh, circle, okay, so many of them come with a similar pain point. Okay, they are looking for their next role, but they're not able to get, let's say, the initial calls, uh, and let's say even if they get through a couple of rounds, they are not able to reach the offer stage. So uh, I saw that quite a few people in my circle were facing the same problem, and but none of us were finding a way out, right? So and the idea was that how do we look for uh, how do we find people, or let's say a community where we can seek help like this, and not only seek help in terms of finding a new role, but getting direction when the market is so dynamic. Okay, uh,
Mhm.
again, one of your took part in one of your webinars, and then I realized that what Pivot does is actually what I was looking for. So they provide an operating system where you can take a step back, try to understand what your requirements are, and then look at getting help from the community. Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, so that was the trigger point. Firstly, I was everyone in my circle was facing the same problem, so I couldn't find
Mhm.
an answer to my problems. So
Mhm.
and when there is a community that is working towards solving the exact problems that I was facing, I thought I
Mhm.
would rather take help rather than trying to fix it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just to kind of clarify that better even more than what you have just said, Deep. And I think this is again something like you said, many people are experiencing where they're applying but not hearing back, despite sometimes having the clarity and confidence on your target role, is because of how crowded the job market has become and how job boards are not always working the way they were supposed to work. And so visibility has gotten compromised significantly, right? Earlier, if there were 200 people applying to a single opening, today there are 500 people applying to the same opening. So I think having access through any community, whether it's your own, whether it's a third party community, to individuals who can help you, like you said, get the feedback that you need, because otherwise you won't get a lot of feedback from companies you're applying to. They just do
Right.
automated rejections and those kind of things. So if you can get somebody to hold a mirror who knows what that industry is about and tell you that these are the things that you need to focus on, and then also expand your visibility in the right ecosystem, right? Share your profile and all that. I think that is something that you're pointing out as one of the most beneficial things about joining such communities. So yeah, no, makes sense. Thanks. For anything else, Deep, that you want to add there?
No, that was
That
majorly
was the primary motivation.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. Now let's talk about the next point, which is something we start off with in the program. And I would say that even people sometimes who feel like, okay, I have the clarity, sometimes they also are surprised by, do undergoing these initial framework based kind of exercises and action items, which is like, when you have been in a role, we primarily work with mid to senior professional, somebody who has at least 5 years experience or more. So when you've been in a role, a lot of times you kind of just design your career in a very default oriented manner. It's kind of like, okay, I've been in this, let me just continue in this, right? That's what the world is also trying to tell you. Everybody in the ecosystem is trying to tell you as well. Don't change, don't consider anything new. And a lot of times we have realized that these shifts are not macro shifts. They're not like, oh, you completely give up what you have done and go into something completely new. They're micro shifts. You change certain aspects of your job or certain industries that you're targeting. So what I want to understand is, what did you do to get more clarity on the type of role, the type of companies that you should be targeting? And that positioning part, I think that both of you have referred to, is something that also perhaps came out of this clarity. So how did you firstly go about acquiring or gaining that clarity, and then how did you also design your positioning based on that clarity? Rikita, we'll go ahead with you.
Yes, I think when I first started working in the program, I went sort of wild into thinking about various other things that I could do. And I think I'm very glad that that was not discouraged. Reason being, for the first time, I think I was able to see myself as something more than what I've been doing. So I was really in it for the validation of my confidence. Also, that was one of the major things that I was really in it for in the program as well. So I really needed to explore, at least let my mind have a little bit of a flight of its own to see what else I can do. So I literally started thinking about changing my fields very drastically from non-profit to profit, from profit to maybe say marketing and all of that. But going out there in many different directions, giving myself and getting the space to sort of do that made me realize exactly where I can sort of zero it down to. So the one thing that really helped was this, that I was able to sort of go wild with my imagination and see what else I could do to help me see myself as more, which was very important. Secondly, I think the exercises were very facilitating. The exercise that we got at in the program were very facilitating in a way that um, it's interesting how the program at Pivot is designed. It's not really something that will spoon feed you, which is something that I got even frustrated with many times, very interestingly. But later on, I realized this is exactly what the program is supposed to do. It is making you engage with yourself. It is making you map your experience. It is making you map your abilities, your skills, and your aspirations, all of that. Um, a part that I think most of us are not engaging with. We simply go on to job boards and we simply sort of start seeing roles that are singing to us, or we're sort of relating to or resonating with. But in doing so, we're not really starting with the basic or the basis of what we should really start with, which is what is it truly that I find myself doing or I can really do or accomplish. So I think that was one thing that really worked for me. All the exercises where I could engage with my experience, where I could really just sort, and took me a lot of time, a lot of discussions. I
Mhm.
think this was the largest chunk of my exercise to eventually zero down into what my positioning is going to be, to eventually zeroing in on what are the different options or what are the different fields I can see myself working in. So I think
Mhm.
this exploratory process and the part where I could engage with my skills, my experience properly, was what enabled me to finally understand my positioning in this very confusing market. It's not just a crowded market. It is also a very, very confusing market. There's a lot of job roles that you will find, and you'll be like, oh, you know what, maybe I can do it. But if you come from clarity, you will know eventually when you read a job description that this is something that is very much up your alley and you can really accomplish it. And once a job description speaks to you, you actually do justice to it later on, whether it comes to writing a CV for it, whether it comes to preparing an interview. You really are able to do justice because you're leading with clarity and not confusion. So, yes, that is what helped me.
I, obviously, this part is something that I recall very, very clearly, how much time we spent in this area. And I think I really saw you and your sort of, brain turning, Rikita, a lot of times when we were having these discussions in exactly the way you phrased it, perfectly said, engaging with your own career and really drawing out examples and insights based on what you have done and how it lines up with the current job market and the future market scenarios that we were evaluating. I think that was a big learning during the process for, I think, your transition.
Big.
Um, yeah, and also I completely second that point. Thanks for highlighting that it's not just a crowded but a complex and confusing market as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's, and Deep also kind of indirectly mentioned it, it's a rapidly evolving market. The dynamics are changing very quickly. So what you had known like 2 years ago is not necessarily true right now. So knowing what is working today, not 2 years ago, is very critical. So yeah, absolutely. Deep, you have been in multiple roles, right? You've done product, you've done strategy, category management. I think you've done different types of things like business transformation as well. Obviously, you had maybe certain idea, certain clarity that, okay, I want to go into this. But how did you decide that, okay, I've been able to work in different types of situations, different type of roles? Now the next step will focus on this. How did you come from so many different experiences to then finalizing and focusing on what you do today?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, can you
Uh,
hear me, Deep?
yeah, I can.
Okay.
Again, this was about getting clarity on a couple of aspects. Oh, so what are you actually trying to optimize for in your next role? So, for me, it was parameters like scope, title, compensation, culture, learning. So these were the parameters that I was trying to weigh in for my next role.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think that was one, and the second was again because I had worked in diverse roles. Okay, uh, the mapping exercise that was done. Okay, it translated into wider surface area. It suggested some of the roles which I wasn't even searching for. Okay,
Hmm.
so although I ended up in the same track, but I've seen that transition happen to a few of my, a few of my friends. So I think these two exercises, okay, helped me, uh, let's say, choose my next let's say stint. uh, Again, it's a combination of getting more clarity about your next step in your career, because again you have to prioritize a few things at my
Hmm.
stage of my personal life. How do I balance along with my career and stuff like that? So one was that, and then again getting a view of what else I could do apart from what I'm currently doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely both of those points are there. But the one thing that I want to ask as a follow-up is, like, say, all these other options that came up during that exercise. I think there are a couple of other things you did with us, and perhaps I think you might have done on your own as well. I'm not sure. But like, for example, you had certain conversations with experts in your target role and those kind of things. So can you help us understand how did you get the clarity, like when you're looking at multiple roles, even though you may not have made a just a decision finalizing one role, but how did you evaluate the different roles and whether they were a good fit for you or not a good fit?
Right. So again, it started with my network. Okay, if there were companies that I was interested in and they had open roles, I would approach them to understand what kind of work they were doing. Doing some research on the background as well, like what is the company doing, how are they performing, what are the areas they are working on, any greenfield areas where I can contribute to or stuff like that. So that was one aspect, and second was again for me, at this point of time I wanted to look at the culture aspect as well, because nowadays we talk a lot about toxic culture and again layoffs etc happening unannounced. So I wanted to be a part of a culture where I can give my best and not worry about the externalities. So
Mhm.
those were some of the parameters that I was looking at. uh, I I did turn down a few roles just because it felt like I could not see myself there for a long period of time. Okay, so
Mhm.
tenure was also something that I was looking at in choosing my next role. So yeah, these
Got
were a
it.
couple of things. I mean, very subjective. What applies to me will not apply to to others. Uh, but yeah, that was the kind of let's say exercise that I wanted to do, so that I don't end up looking for going into the market again in the next year or two. Okay,
Yeah.
just because the
Yeah.
work environment or let's say the work is not conducive.
Hmm. Sure. Sure. No, thanks for sharing that. um Before we dive into the next topic, I just want to let our audience know. Firstly, thank you so much all for joining in today on Wednesday evening, taking precious time out from your day. Um, we are going to be taking up your questions. I'm seeing quite a few questions come up already in the chat. So we'll be taking them up in just a few minutes. We'll just discuss one more topic, which I think a lot of you have asked this previously about. So I want to make sure that we get Rikita and Deep's thoughts over there before we move on to the questions that are coming up now. So, now I think the next sort of discussion topic that I want to focus on is probably the most common question that we get asked, which is that, hey, once you know which direction you want to head in, how do you actually get there? So how do you get more interview callbacks? How do you make sure you convert those callbacks as well? So let's break it down a little bit into, I would say, three parts, right? Number one is making sure that you have the right job application. I think, Rikita, you've mentioned about the CV a couple of times, and there are other aspects to job application as well, right? So there is that. Then there are certain other things outside of job application that you might have been doing, like networking, outreach, making yourself more visible. And then the third thing is the interviews that people get, and they need to convert them to get the offer. So maybe if you could talk about anything that you did in these three areas, and if there's anything else which you feel helped you get more visibility in the market, more interviews, and ultimately the offer.
Yes, I think I would really, I have a lot to say about this because of my recent experiences and also because I've been on the other side. I have also done some hiring for my organization. So I sort of have a few points that I think could help. So I think for me, what worked was I decided to not apply randomly to many places. Now again, like Deep mentioned, what worked for me is very subjective and might not work for other people, but this worked for me. um, I did not apply to several jobs that I saw coming in. I applied very intentionally, and I did two things. I first understood the culture, like Deep also mentioned. The culture was very important for me as well. I first understood the culture of the particular organization that I was sort of looking at. I tried to understand exactly what is the long-term trajectory of anyone who joins that organization. Secondly, when I started writing down my CV, the first CV that actually was able to sort of get from Pivot made me understand exactly how to frame my experience. So I remember that I did not use the same CV for all the jobs. Very important.
Mhm.
Whichever job I applied to, I mapped out everything that job description was really talking about. Reading the job description properly came in handy for two things: for writing the CV and for also interviewing in many different stages. Because if you
Mhm.
don't understand the role properly, you will never be able to do justice to your CV. And let's say somehow by fluke you even reach the interview stage, you will never be able to really do justice to the interview because you would have not understood the role, and you would have not been able to actually map your experiences vis-a-vis the JD, which the recruiter is really looking to sort of understand. So,
Mhm.
which means that from the very beginning, I applied very intentionally. I made sure to read the JD thoroughly 20 times at least. Um, what I did was everybody now can use AI to make their CVs. There's no two ways about it. You can. I'm not saying you shouldn't use AI, but what you really need to do is that you can't really just slap on keywords into your CV that the JD is asking of you. You really need to be able to justify. Every time that I was writing my CV, I was very keenly trying to understand whatever word I have written here, will I be able to justify it if I reach the interview? So I was thinking that way. So any
Mhm.
word that went into my CV was intentional. I had stories to back it up. I had evidence to back it up. Otherwise, that word wouldn't go. I did use AI, but I only used AI to sort of understand what are the keywords and what are the basic things that this JD was asking for. And then
Mhm.
I mirrored those keywords in a way that spoke of my experience and skills, and in a way that I could also justify them. So there was nothing fake about what I wrote there. When I'm receiving CVs, I'm sometimes very stunned and I see, oh wow, that's a really great CV. But when you speak to them over a screening call or over an interview, you're left completely deflated because there's nothing that this person is on in reality what they have portrayed to be on paper. It is a very
Mhm.
deflating experience for both the candidate and for you as well as a recruiter. So you
Yeah.
don't want that. You don't want that redundancy. So let's not create that redundancy in this entire ecosystem, is what I would say. Applying intentionally is extremely important. And that is why I was able to, I think one of the major reasons why I was able to get the interview calls was because my
Mhm.
CV was well written. And
Mhm.
I didn't apply for many jobs, and I actually got response from at least 90% of them, at least till the first round I reached, at least till the screening round or or the interview round. I was able to reach at least till then
Yeah.
because of the intention. And then comes the interview part. I think what really stood out for me in the interview part was two things. I spoke with the mentors at Pivot. They helped me understand. They helped me ground me in my experience and in my skills, and that gave me a lot of confidence. I took a lot of tips and tricks from you, Arjun, before any interview. I think to understand the larger ecosystem and to understand the approach that one should take. Again, none of this process was spoon feeding me. All this process was really giving me was a lot of food for thought to engage with and to bring in my own sort of recipe to it. So every
Mhm.
time that I went back after talking to you, Arjun, I think I was able to then sort of have my evidence stories, my backstories to for the interview to sort of engage with the person who was interviewing me. So I was able to really justify what I had written.
Mhm.
And secondly, what I realize is that this is a mistake that I've seen a lot of people make, is that when they're talking about their experience, they usually talk in, okay, we did so and so in so and so organization. That usually ends up being very redundant because the person sitting in front of you is not really interested in you and is not really interested in the organization and its detailed description of what that organization does. But what they're truly interested in is what you contributed.
Mhm.
How you contributed to that particular work that was being done in the organization. So changing just that positioning is very important. Never speaking with we, always speaking with I. You're representing yourself, you're not representing your organization. So that switch really needs to happen. And this is a problem with, I think this is probably a little bit of a larger problem in the dev sector because we're taught to sort of always represent our organization, represent our cause, which is great. We should always do that. But sitting in an interview, you have to make that switch. You have to understand that the person is really interested in you and how you contributed. And I think that is how I was able to sort of maybe perhaps land the role, and then sort of transitioned into the rounds as they came in. And whenever there was an assignment round in dev sector, that's very popular, having assignments, having case studies. I ensured to even understand the assignment and the case study to its very depth, to the nuances of that very assignment question, and I try to play to that detail that they're asking for. So all of my assignments, whatever I did, was very detailed. Um, when I was sitting in front of them in an interview, I was able to justify every slide that I had made. So I think that's something that really helped me. My process was not, um, large in quantity, but I think my process was based in a lot of quality and
Yeah.
intention. So that is something that I could vouch for.
I think that was comprehensively answered, Rikita. I think you covered a lot of good ground there. I think you've hit all the key points. The one thing that I do recall, and if you can maybe just share briefly about that as well, is, apart from the confidence and the tips and tricks, I think you talked about those evidence stories, right? And the key examples. So I think one of the things was also really showcasing a lot of impact in the role that you have created. And because you had done so many different things, I think initially it was slightly hard to figure out how to communicate that impact very clearly, even in your resume and then also in the interview preparation. So can you just maybe briefly tell, for people who might be going through similar situation where they are hard pressed to find examples to showcase impact,
Hmm.
what did
Hmm.
you do to extract those
Hmm.
impact specific
Hmm. Hmm.
examples and
Hmm.
insights that made
Hmm.
a lot of difference, I feel, to the outcomes.
Hmm. No, I think you're right, Arjun. I think it was a very difficult part of my journey, and it remained difficult until the very end. So, what I would say is, I would say that even if there are people who are not really thinking of transitioning right now, or in the near future, what everybody should do and what I would do now, what I would do differently now would be. Uh, Not starting this activity or not starting this sort of exercise when it comes to it, when you're applying for job roles or when you're doing that, because you're under a lot of pressure and there's a lot of expectation from yourself. So you're probably not able to think that clearly at that point, especially when an interview is looming over you. So what I would do differently and what I would really advise is start your evidence bank now and now today, even if you're not thinking of applying. Start your
Yeah.
evidence bank today. you know Start writing all the skills. I would probably make an evidence bank. I would also probably make an experience or a skill set bank where I would document everything that I have done and what are the skills that I have used. So I would start this exercise. I think it should be, nobody tells you this, but I think this should be an exercise to be done regularly. A lot of people say update your CV, update your CV. I think that's exactly what they really mean by it. They don't really mean by just write that you have accomplished so and so many numbers, but it also means mapping your skills that you're acquiring as you go, new
Yeah.
experiences that you're writing about. So, I would do that differently. And that's exactly how I did it. I had to work backwards to the last so many years. It was very tough. So,
Yeah.
what helped me in that sense was, again, the reading of my JD. I read
Mhm.
the JD. I took that as a prompt, and I sort of started answering these questions. Okay, this if they're asking me for end-to-end implementation, let me write down all the parts, all the projects that I have implemented end-to-end. So I made an
Mhm.
extensive sort of bank for that. But I think what would really help is you start today. Like
Yeah.
starting today is going to be game changing, I think, for all of us
Sure.
looking
Sure.
to transition
Absolutely.
at any point. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rikita. And Deep, I think same question exactly for you. I think one of the things that you had mentioned earlier to me as well was the discussions you had with industry experts and gotten the feedback and those kind of things. So whatever you want to highlight in terms of things that helped you, no, once you had the clarity on the role, how do you actually get more interviews? How do you land more offers?
Yeah, so I think most of the things that Rikita has already mentioned should be should be a part of it. One of the things I felt worked in my favor was I had colleagues who would vouch for me very strongly, so that helped. So you need to,
Mhm.
if you have such, let's say, if you have such a network, you should really use them, because if they can vouch for you, then your first level is already done. You already, let's say, into the process, and then
Mhm.
it's how you carry on from there. uh, so that is important. Second, I think, as Nikita also mentioned, I mean, as your body of work grows, okay, there are many things that you do and you can't mention it on your resume, because again, your resume has to be, let's, 1.5 page, whatever it is. But aligning it to what you want to showcase is important. Okay. There were very niche roles that I was able to, let's say, get into the process of, because I tried to highlight things which were not very easily, skill sets which are not very easily available, or experiences which are not easily available. So
Mhm.
looking at the JD is very important. Again, for those roles, uh, I got into the process. I got very good feedback. Uh, I didn't end up joining there, but the exercise was very important, where I understood that uh, the JD and your body of work can be mapped. Your one resume is something which can be customized based on what you've done in the past, and everything that you've done cannot be added. I mean, cannot be a part of your resume when you're trying to, let's say, apply for roles. So one resume obviously doesn't work. Uh,
Mhm.
so look for niche roles where you can apply for, uh, and then get very strong recommendations wherever you can.
Absolutely. Great. I think we have covered a lot of good information here. The last thing that I want to ask before we get into the audience's questions here, the new ones that have been shared, is Nikita, if maybe just you could highlight what were the key things. You've already highlighted certain things actually, but what were the top, let's say, three things that helped you the most from a pivot program perspective? And then Deep, we can go to you, and then we'll take up the questions from the audience.
I think the mentorship was, I think, the highlight of this program for me. Mentorship from you, Arjun, from other mentors, other industry experts, because they give you an overview of what is happening in the industry, and you get out of yourself. You have to also get out of yourself while you are also engaging with yourself. You have to get out of yourself, understand the larger world out there, the ecosystem out there. So I think that really helped me. Secondly, I think the mapping exercises were a game changer for me. I've mentioned this before, and I think I'm glad I got frustrated in the process, because that frustration was required for me to actually be able to bring something out of the experience that gave me confidence, that I could actually go out there and say, oh, you know what, I can apply. I am something of like, I have a standing in this market, I can apply. So that was second. And I think thirdly, I would say um, the interview prep. When I reached the interview stage, the prep was again not something that you. It's amazing how the program is not something like, oh, you know what, go say this. You know what, go say this. It's not like that. The prep stage of the work at Pivot was really about, again, giving you those points. Like, you gave me points about how maybe you have to map so and so. You highlighted for me how the first page of this JD is what they're truly looking for. So when I had that, I was able to then go in and map my skills and skill set to that particular JD.
Yeah, and sort
That
of
was really it.
craft that narrative that you needed to do.
Craft that narrative. Yeah, I mean, there was a coherent story at the end of the program. I started from essentially having no story and having no vocabulary, and I ended up with a coherent story um, at towards the end of it, which is what probably led me to be confident and then put myself out there, and then subsequently prove that this is my experience. So yes, I think these
Right.
are the three things that I would say
No, I
benefit.
think yeah, completely resonate with that. Thanks for sharing that. Deep, could you share your top three things that you found most helpful?
Yeah, obviously the first one was access to senior folks in the community, and not so this was for me. This was more for collaboration, where we actually so to understand how they fill roles. Okay, what makes them look at a profile twice. Uh, okay, so
Hmm.
getting the perspective from the hiring managers themselves or people who sit across the table. So that was the biggest highlight. Second was obviously the mapping exercise. The mapping exercise uh, help you look beyond what you're trying to look for. Okay, you may be stuck in titles, but there are roles or there are opportunities which you're not even exploring because your search doesn't include everything that you can let's say everything that can provide as everything that you own or know or provide as a person. Okay, so yeah,
Got it.
these are the two biggest positives that I took away.
Okay. All right. Let's dive into the questions that we have here. So I think the first one is actually an interesting one. I'll just project it here, and either of you feel free to take it up. This is something from a slightly different perspective, which is, as a fresher, how do you apply for jobs? What can be the strategy to apply or start applying? Obviously, we focus more on mid-career transitions, but we have all been freshers at some point, and we know the job market is being impacted for freshers as well. Since Anusha has joined the session, I do want to definitely see if either of you have any pointers. Um, Feel free. I mean, I'm not going to pick one person. I don't want to put either of you on spot. But if you have any pointers for somebody who's a fresher right now, how should they be thinking about navigating this kind of a crowded and complex job market? Nikita, you want to take a stab?
I'll take a stab at it. I think I would say, even as a fresher, it's very important to be able to map out your skills, that you have, because nobody will be able to map your skills and who you are better than you.
Mhm.
Nobody, you can ask, you can get templates after templates of CV, but engaging first of all with a good CV is important. Understanding that you will need it at every step of the process, whether you're a fresher or a mid-career person. You will need to be in full understanding of what your skill set is, because what your skill set is what you are going to bank upon, is exactly what is going to sort of be making you interesting for the recruiter. So I think I would say that it is important not to be copying anyone or anyone's template. It's important to first narrow down exactly what you bring to the table, and even a fresher, even as a fresher, you would have a lot to bring to the table. So I would say that is the one thing, and I think networking becomes very important. I believe as a fresher also. So because you're just right out of college, you would have seniors. Networking with your seniors and your alumni is going to be so important, because you will be able to understand exactly when you step out in the market what is it that is really in that market, something that I didn't do in the beginning. I remember my senior once just told me, you get paid peanuts when you go out in the market, and when you've done MSW, and that narrative shaped so much of my career, I cannot tell you. So talking to the right people, the right alumni, is going to be game changing, I think, in terms of networking and also in terms of understanding what is really out there in the market when you step out. So these are the two things I would say you should do.
Okay. Deep, would you like to add anything to this?
Mm, yeah, so I think firstly we need to look at building some body of work. Okay, uh, do some internships, do side projects. Today you can do a lot of stuff without being a part of an organization. So one is that, showing proof of work rather. Second is be open. Okay, so don't get stuck to a job title, job role. Okay, or even a company. Okay, be flexible. Wherever you find an opportunity, get your foot in, do the work, and then take it from there.
Okay. No, fair enough. And one of the follow-up questions that Anusha also has is about what kind of platforms apart from LinkedIn, Naukri might help get more relevant job opportunities. Do you have any pointers on that, Deep?
And so honestly, again, as I said, these platforms, I've lost trust in these platforms. So I won't suggest them, because for me, it's kind of a waste of time. If you start looking at so don't look at platforms, try to explore companies that you want to work for. Start from there. There are many job roles that are available on the company websites as well, that are not a part of these job portals. Again, connect with the people, try to understand what they are looking for. How can you be a match or a fit, or if
Mhm.
there is a gap, you can try and fill that gap. Okay. So spending time on job portals, I think, no longer works. In fact, I feel the relevance of these portals will go down as we see the job market as we see the job market transitioning. So yeah.
I'd like to add something here. I think in today's day and age, there are many other things also happening other than the job portals. There are communities now, communities that sometimes, at least in the dev sector, I'm sure that even other sectors would have their own communities. They sort of collate all the job openings, and they sort of put it out there for you on either a WhatsApp group or a Reddit group, or even a LinkedIn group for that matter. So perhaps joining those groups is going to be very important. And I fully agree with Deep when he says that you should be able to map out the companies that you want to be working for, and perhaps keep checking exactly, where there's an opening, or if it is possible for you, maybe even send a resume their way. You never know. Sometimes they're probably starting to, think of hiring, and when they have a CV in their repository, they might just consider you. So
Mhm.
joining groups is going to be very good. So for example, there's another website for dev sector jobs called devnet.org.
Mhm.
A lot of jobs are posted there. Very niche jobs are posted there for the dev sector. So that could be important,
Like
but
industry
groups and all
specific
that.
job portals. Yeah,
Very
definitely.
specific job portals, yes. Yes.
Definitely, very helpful. All right, I think we just have one final question, which I'm going to show here. I think, Rikita, this is primarily directed at you. So please go ahead and share your thoughts. But basically, two questions. Were you already clear about the role you wanted to transition to before joining Pivot? And have you landed in a similar role or same role or different? And then approximate time it took to land the role.
Great question. I think no, I was not clear at all. I was, in fact, as puzzled as a puzzle is really. I was, like I mentioned in the beginning, I was going absolutely wild into what I would be doing the next time I am working in a job. Yes, there were two or three things very clear to me that I would want to work in a larger organization. That was probably very clear to me. And have I landed the role? The role that I have landed was honestly not something that I realized that I could actually land. I didn't know that I could actually land that. In fact, when it came to the table that I could be on the other side of the implementation, which is a philanthropic organization, I didn't think I could be a part of that. But because I was actually a part of this process and I was reading and I was understanding all of the work that is being done, there's a lot of clarity that I got. I understood that philanthropic organizations or grant making organizations are also doing very worthy work, and they're also very close to implementing projects. So I think that is where I found a little bit of a switch, and I sort of landed this role that I will be starting, and hopefully I'm right. How much time did it take me? Honestly, if I were to count the entire process, if I were to count, I think the entire process was not really about applying for me. For me, the entire process, it took me a long time to come into terms with what I really wanted to do, what my positioning is going to be, and how I'm going to put myself out in the market. That took me more than a year. But this was me. It took me so long because I think I was also dealing with a lot of anxiety for of putting myself out there. So there's also that factor. But actually, interestingly, when I applied, it barely took me 3 months. And I remember somebody telling me very close to me saying, when you put yourself out there in the market, it will really just take you 3 to 4 months. You have that kind of skill set that you can get it. And honestly, it really just took me 3 months to get this role. And I would
Mhm.
just say one more thing that other than doing everything that you're doing professionally for a job role, always be exposed to people who always put sort of their vote of confidence in you, because that eventually translates into your confidence. Surrounding yourself with ambitious people, surrounding yourself with people who have who have faith in you really goes a long way in this process. So yeah.
Well said. On that note, actually, we have just one final question here. We'll just take that up, and then I think we should be ready to wrap up. This one is from Anushri and slightly longer, so I'll just read it quickly. So I've been able to do two things while wanting to pivot to newer areas, position my resume as per relevant skills, and reaching out to people in the area of my expertise, I guess. How do you get people to talk to you if it's a newer space? How do you go about networking in a newer space? I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, one of the things that I would just say right off the bat, find those communities, the ones that both Deep and Rikita are talking about. Pivot is one platform that can help you get connected to a lot of such individuals as well, no matter which industry you're in. But apart from that, Deep or Rikita, anything else that you would like to highlight from a networking perspective?
So one thing I was not clear about is when you talk about newer space, you're saying that you are trying to step into a role which you haven't worked on
I believe so. I think
previously,
that's
right?
what she's saying. Pivot to newer areas means like
Right.
probably trying to land roles where she has less experience or background in.
Got it. So from my point of view, I would say again reach out to the right people. By right people, I would say people who've started recently in that role. Okay, to understand what they are doing and how they are doing stuff. Again, if required, work work closely with startups in that area, or maybe look at So again, if you're starting in a new space, it's again like starting in a new starting afresh. So you might have some skill sets to back you,
Mhm.
but it's good to find an entry point and showcase what you can, let's say, provide. uh, Apart from that, this can be different at different levels. There are people who are experienced and then transitioning to other roles. For them it might not
Mhm.
be a blank slate. They can use the existing skill sets and then transition to the new role. But for
Yep.
people who have relatively lower experience, I think it's good to start from the basics. So I mean, again, it's about how you try to show your capabilities, your proof of work, and then try to get into roles. Not Don't worry about the kind of comp that you're getting, the kind of title that you're getting. Focus on the kind of work that you're getting.
Yeah. I think I'd like to add just one more thing. Whenever joining the right communities is definitely very important, and Pivot has that community as well. I would say, let's say you're in that community and you want to reach out to people you want to reach out to. I would say lead with a lot of curiosity rather than leading with just about getting references. Lead with a lot of curiosity, curiosity about what is the kind of work that they're doing, how did they get there, what are the other things that, getting even advice and tips and tricks from them uh, would perhaps be important, which is what I did with the industry experts as well. I led with a lot of curiosity about the job, the role, the industry that I'm sort of wanting to put my sort of foot in. So I would do that.
Perfect. All right, great. Thank you both so much. I think we've um, gone beyond our time, so I think it's really been very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing all the different nuances of your transition. For folks who joined us, I hope you got some practical level insights that you can start applying towards your transition right away. If you are looking for support, definitely check out Pivot. I've shared the link to our website in the signature on my profile here. And you can also connect with folks like Rikita and Deep on LinkedIn in case you'd like to, get more in-depth feedback on their experience transitioning with Pivot and on their own. That's pretty much it for today, folks. Thanks again for joining, and special thanks, Rikita and Deep, for being here and sharing your journey so wholeheartedly with us. I hope everybody has a good rest of their evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks a lot. It's been great.